Why the U.S.?
Why the U.S.? Just want to see them get out of their group stage, and then the old American grit and personality kind of come out, and we go back to the good old days of like, look, we're just going to work harder and more than our opponent, and I think you're going to find that that might be really useful in the desert, Qatar.
All right, as a soccer coach, I'll ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel this team's ready with the makeup of the team, not having a roster set yet, rotation of players constantly, and no confidence in anything representing a competent attack?
From a soccer perspective, yeah, those are all good points, all right, for sure. But a tournament is a tournament, all right? It's a short window. A lot of the players in the American system aren't, let's say, like playing as many games, collectively as the other ones. They're playing in good leagues right now. I think they get good minutes, but there's a little bit less pressure for them annually. So to have this small window of time where they get to go out and kind of, again, show their personality and be assertive, I kind of think it fits us, right? And the other organizations or countries right now are in a different space. Argentina has pressure with Messi saying it's going to be his last World Cup. You got England that always feels the pressure. France has got injuries coming out of this being in the middle of the winter for the very first time ever. So there's a lot of other mitigating factors that, the good old American opportunity, if you will, right? It's an opportunity that might just fit their profile. You got to get hot at some point, but tournaments are about defending, and we do that well. Even with our center back pairings over the last couple of games, I think, hey, look, we found a little something that might work in a very small window of time. But again, ball's round, you never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
You are such an optimist.
I try.
You
I
are
try.
a massive optimist.
But what about you in the World Cup?
I'm always a Brazil fan. I love the way Brazil plays, so I always watch them just because I love the flair, I love the creativity, I love the passion they play with. So I always root for them because I want to watch them play as many games as possible. So for me, Brazil every day.
Yep.
Plus, it's an unproven historical location, right? So nobody knows who's ever had success here. So this is going to be, for me, I think, a Western Hemisphere team.
Okay.
So Brazil or Argentina, but I go for Brazil.
Okay, I like it. What about in the African nations? Anybody coming out of there that you think might be a dark horse or Cinderella story?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I think what you find historically with African nations is they lack a little bit of that next level of tactical preparedness, a little bit of balance in the roster and the depth in the roster that, yes, they perform well to a certain level. Ghana a few World Cups ago really did a exceptional job. But I think maybe a quarterfinal is probably a ceiling for an African nation team.
That's good, though.
But I think this could be the year that if someone could surprise, they can move into a semifinal.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from, too. I think this is the year where someone's going to surprise us, something unexpected, and, hopefully that could be the Americans,
I just hope the Americans score a goal. That's where I'm at this right now. My prediction for America, 0 wins, 2 losses, 1 tie. That tie is going to be 0-0.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's a lot of good info. I like it.
That's me being real.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What do you feel, Marcos, in the operations side really separates Cleveland Force?
I think our robust staff and professionals that we have that really have brought forth a different level of professionalism to our membership, from the investment into play metrics to being our core operating system. So we no longer operate in multiple different systems. So we've created a singular experience for ourselves to manage, as well as for our membership to experience the off-field with our club. I think our level of professionals that we have and the customer care that we provide and how quick we are from a front office standpoint or an admin standpoint to provide feedback and guidance to our members, I think really separates us from an operations and business management perspective.
Yeah, I would concur on all those points. Something from the footballing side of things, have seen a increase in our customer service through those platforms, Playmetrics. I think our investment into our coaching staff is massively improved over the years, and one of the things that separates us more than anybody else, because we have the ability to field different levels of coaches, anywhere from an A license or academy director, and we often entertain those that have their UEFA badges, and all the way down to our grassroots and the investment we're making into those coaches, to help them grow as individuals, as coaches, and reimburse them is one of the things I think an investment that staff has done. the organization has done, and also the teaching piece. I think that we have a very clear curriculum and a style that we want to execute, which I think is aesthetically pleasing both to the families that are involved with our club, and then most importantly the players. They enjoy it because we're more progressive. We're not showing up to games where we're on the back foot. We're usually on the front foot, which I think people are enjoying as they get used to doing things. And our investment into our juniors program, I think that separates us because the kids are growing organically. They're having a more holistic experience, which I think really speaks to our integrity value. That we're trying to do things from the footballing side and the operational side, from cradle to grave. That term has been used a lot. So I just think our football, our teaching, the people that we're surrounding ourselves with that are professional, I really think those make us really unique as an organization.
I'd add one more thing into that is the addition of program managers that support the directors so that there is an extra layer of admin support and communication support to our members has been a critical success point for us that we've invested into. So for me, that's part of the operational admin team, management team that helps support the technical component of what we try to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to build on this and even speak to our history a little bit, as well as an organization, and say, what do you feel historically has added value to Cleveland Force?
In which sense?
I would say,
historically, generally.
Historically, either our own personal pathways, our founding fathers, because I can only speak to on my side. I think historically, just knowing what an Ali Casamania, George Nanchoff, or Joe Reduca has done for us, and even their histories, and knowing has really had an influence on how we interact with our membership and our players today as well. Speaking of Joe, can you share a little bit about Joe and maybe how he's influenced you as a player and how you kind of lead our organization?
Sure. I'm a Cleveland kid and played for my father's club growing up, and unfortunately did not bode well when my father was my coach, right? We butted heads,
Right.
Same thing as when I worked with him.
Yep.
So, we just have personalities that don't mesh when it comes to the on-field.
Mm-hmm.
So, off the field's been great, but when I was young, he had a hard time coaching me, I had a hard time being coached by him. And although we had very successful teams with very talented players on our team, specifically Coach Chris Green, who was my teammate for all of my youth years at Cleveland United, which was one of the founding clubs that formulated Cleveland Force. We had a lot of talent, but we were uncoachable, which I think has formulated me to be a better coach, to know that I can't let players waste their opportunities because of the time that I've had as a player where we didn't take it as seriously because we weren't maybe disciplined enough, focused enough, driven enough, goal-oriented enough, where we just won based on pure talent.
Yeah.
For my father, he, really instilled in me the way to treat people, how to treat and give kids confidence, how to especially treat parents, how to welcome people, how to say hello to everybody, how to shake hands. Don't be fearful. In our industry, too many coaches, too many directors are fearful of the interactions with parents. They try to avoid it, whereas, I've been in the upbringing of making sure you have that human side to yourself. Be a person first. Make sure that they understand that their kids are in good care of good people. And that will help alleviate a lot of the stresses that parents have when they have questions. They don't know, who to go to, how to answer it, and if people are not approachable. So I think that's really helped our organization. We hear that about a lot of our directors is, we have that in us now where directors are very personal with our staff. Coach Vishnu does a great job. Coach Chris Green, just as two people to make as an example, have really gotten a lot of applause from their parents that they oversee in their organization and their programs, so that they have a great experience. They feel as though they're heard, that they understand the person that's working with them and their child.
Yeah, Joe has been really influential in my pathway. I was blessed as well to play for Joe and George in my own way, and as a guest player with internationals where I'd go to Cleveland United, and just the lessons that we were learning, just to kind of build off of what you said about Joe as far as like teaching us to be good young men and be personable and be kind. I always remember going over to Sweden, and he would do these little games and do different things like that. But he was always speaking to us about like, hey, just represent yourself well. You're in another country. You're doing these different things. But he always was having fun with us, So understanding like, how do we interact with our parents, how do we interact with the players. The Kiki candies mean something, right? It's got to be fun. It's got to be enjoyable first and foremost. And their mentorship, just being in the beginning of everything that we've done when we sat around the table there at Richmond to develop our core values, develop our traditions that we're starting to build on. They always spoke to us about coming into a building, saying hi to our parents, making sure that we have an interaction with them, which actually inspired maybe something from us being unique again with our check-in meetings and our IDPs that we offer our families, where we sit and develop development plans to make sure everyone knows it's about the player. We have great teams, we have great organization, we have pathways for them, but we really are focused on building that opportunity to be vulnerable with our families too. And I think, Kaz in his way, George Nanchoff and Joe have always exemplified that, a stern presence to them, understanding we got to get things done and be disciplined, but also that we also have to interact in this space together and enjoy each other's company. So I think their part of our history has really kind of shaped the way that we go about doing things, and has inspired us to continue to try and be innovative in how we serve our membership and how we serve our customers going forward. So really, really appreciate those guys. More and more I look back.
Absolutely. I mean, they were some of the first club operators in the market, and they, really instilled a lot of our values as kids growing up, influenced us in many ways. And you look at the culture of our club now, where you have a representation of so many different coaches and directors that have come from those three clubs. Georgie Nanchoff Jr. is still a part of the club, an integral part in the younger boys program, where you have this blended culture that we've kind of melted into our own, where it's been really unique because, in all fairness, all three of those cultures were different. Yeah. And now you look at our organization, we're very multidimensional in our approach with the balance between having a kid have a great time and a great experience versus being highly competitive and going after it and trying to see if we can get results. So, we are a club that I think because of that, we're able to be successful as a diverse organization where we can facilitate the needs and expectations of kids at every single level and their parents.
Yeah, and I love what you just said about every single level, right? Because now you look at the organization, how it's evolved from the vision and image that they kind of implanted with us a long time ago. So we have a high-performance environment that we instill a different type of culture, different type of standards that we're looking to do. It always brings me back to those days of the Cleveland United days, the Internationals days, especially when you were looking at these teams that were really striving for success out on the field. They had a certain presence about them. I think that's been really cool to see, and now we have our competitive programming that allows us to provide that opportunity to different levels as they go through it, which also allows us the flexibility to say that players are going to grow and evolve, right? So as we're looking at our values to really drive what we do, we have the player-centered environment that has different levels to it that helps us not only respect our present, but also give respect to our past as well, to say like, hey, these are the founding kind of principles that were instilled into us at a very young age, that you kind of see us still living out and actually influencing others as well. Like you talked about our program managers and our directors and the coaching staff. It's really nice to see that we're building an organization that is holistic, both with the player abilities, the families that we have that are involved, which leads me to this question for you, Marco. When you think of style of play, and Cleveland Force, and maybe even go in a broader context, the style of play as a whole in our country. Could you speak a little bit to that, as how you think our club style of play is, and then maybe what style of play is for us in the United States? I know I made that a little broad, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll speak. I'll go first from a general standpoint with the United States. I think there are small pockets of clubs that have a real purpose and are driven by a formalized style of play that they've actually have put together, structured it, and have delivered it across their club. But unfortunately, that's one of the challenges in youth soccer in America, is you don't have great leadership and guidance that are going to be patient and deliver a style of play versus going out to get results. I've seen at the highest levels with youth soccer that, unfortunately, styles of play are not consistent across team to team within a singular program. I think, and admittedly for us, we have put in a lot of work, yourself mainly, has put in a lot of work to really deliver a consistent on-field resemblance of who Cleveland Force is, with how we want to play, how we want to build out of the back, how we want to play through our midfield, how we need to integrate combinations of functional lines, and how we ultimately want to get in goal-scoring opportunities and position ourselves to be victorious through the right style of play that suits us and the makeup and the player profiles of those that we want to be a part of Cleveland Force.
No, I love that, and I love how you kind of concluded that. The different profiles of players and the different things that might come with that, right? We have put a lot of time in understanding that in our style of play, we want to be adaptable, understanding that we're coming out of the Midwest, we're coming out of Cleveland, and we want to aspire to compete against the best teams in the country, right? And they have resources that we do not have. So, we really looked at style of play from that holistic, that American model. Say, hey, we need to be adaptable. Sometimes we need to be able to sit back a little bit and absorb the pressure, but always saying that we want to be proactive and trying to be on the front foot to give an environment that promotes decision making. Because ultimately we're in the development business, right? So we got to make sure that from U9 or even as low as U6 all the way to U19 that we're creating a space where kids have the chances to make choices, right? So we're never going to just be dogmatic in our approach where it's just one style of play. We do want to have the ball, because we think that promotes decision making, and the standards change, as you kind of go through, but we're aesthetically pleasing. We want to have it. We want the kids to move. We want them to think. We want them to have fun when they're doing it. They got to show their passion. When I think of something as far as deeper as like a system of play, you're going to see us having more players progressing forward than sitting back more often than not. And we've actually made that a part of our coach evaluation process, which I think also makes us unique because now I can go to a game knowing we have a style, knowing we're trying to achieve certain things, and when you start to see those things kind of bubble up, you can help the player understand, you can help the parent understand, you can help the coach understand more. So it just kind of all builds into that decision making and growth and passion for the game. Ultimately, is the style that we have. From the American side, totally agree with you. The leadership that we've put together inside of Cleveland Force, I think, is a part of that small group that you mentioned earlier that's really committed to the long-term development. That is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And trying to educate families to understand that our style is predicated on the long-term development of their kid and not just the moment that they're in at that given time.
Yeah, and I think the term development is really overused in our industry. I think that's just one of those terms that gets thrown out quite frequently with no substance behind it. I think really where we have changed our approach is we've really taken more of an educational approach on this, where you think about building blocks from grades K through 12. I think that's exactly what we've done. We've used the term classrooms purposefully so that it resonates with an educational pathway for players to understand that they are learning year over year in a building block scenario. And yes, development is tied into it, but this is mainly educational. You look at our club, what makes us a little bit different, not just in our market, but I think maybe across the country, is we're much more patient with results, that we understand results will come for us in the older ages because of the patience and the confidence and support we're giving younger players that aren't rushing them into lifting trophies and winning tournaments. We put out all of our accomplishments on our website, on social media and whatnot, but we have a lot of positive things to take out of the educational process, that this is really what is our core building block, more so than the term just developmental. It's the opportunity to educate parents, players on the long-term process rather than constantly using a moniker that's being used across the country that's a bit empty, unfortunately, these last, I'd say, decade. So I think we've pivoted from that. Yes, we use the term development like everyone else because it's relevant, but we're really an educational organization, similar to what a school would be. Back in the day, they used to be called soccer schools. And I think that is part of our founding culture as well, that these are soccer schools that came together that are teaching kids how to develop as a soccer player, as a person, as a young man or woman, how to be a good citizen, and ultimately how to achieve their goals in a healthy manner.
So, just going back to the Cleveland Force. Why Cleveland Force? Why the rebrand? How did we get here?
Yeah, I think it's important to look back before we can look forward. And the Cleveland Force was a very prominent and well-supported and successful professional indoor soccer team in the early 80s. The league folded sometime in the mid-80s. And from that team, you had my father, Joe Raduca, you had Ali Kazamani, and you had George and Louis Nanchoff, that were all teammates on that team, and they played under the Cleveland Force umbrella. So when you look at what occurred after their careers had ended, they all started their own youth soccer clubs in the market. They stayed in Cleveland. They loved the community. They loved the people. They were well known in the community, and they were able to start a business here that was extremely successful and well supported. And when we started looking at this, Everett, you and I started talking about this many, many years ago about how do we bring what we're trying to achieve individually, how do we come together to achieve more?
Yes.
And that's what this whole idea was, is how do we give up our own ownership, our own controls to be able to work together to create something bigger and better for the city of Cleveland. And with the help of Greg and Shaw Abrams, who had the rights to the name Force, we formulated a strategy that would say, now that we've brought Ali Kazimani with CSA Impact, we brought Joe Raduca with Cleveland United, we brought George and Louis Nanchoff with Internationals Boys Soccer Club. Now we have some of the original teammates all together now, and it was just perfect harmony to go back to the name Cleveland Force, so that their life cycle of them coming together as teammates now allows them to be chairmen on the end of their careers in the Cleveland Force as well. So, we have a long history of those three clubs independently. Now we have this new history of an old name with a new future under the name of Cleveland Force.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And then continue to think about the rebrand and building on that as traditions that came with that, right? That came with, Ali Kazimani at a Cleveland Soccer Academy, or as you mentioned, George Nanchoff with Internationals and Joe with Cleveland United. Those traditions that they brought has really molded Cleveland Force to say, hey, look, they had a strong following of people around Northeast Ohio. So we want to respect that as well, that we brought these three very prominent clubs together to also say we want to have three very prominent training centers around Northeast Ohio to cultivate the top talent in Northeast Ohio, but also share the passion that these gentlemen had for the game, because they were teammates, they enjoyed each other, and they competed with each other, no different than we still do today with the whole thing. So we think it's just a nice symbolic way of, respecting them and showing the care and the love that we have for them, and as we carry that in the Cleveland Force today.
Yeah, and you look at those players and their pathways, they're all unique. I use my father as an example. My father, who at a young age was a junior Yugoslavian national team player, played for one of the biggest clubs in the world at that time in Red Star Belgrade. He was the first player that was able to leave the Yugoslavian professional league at a young age. Typically, you'd have to be over the age of 22 to be able to get rights to leave the country as a player. So they granted him rights, and he came over to North America, where his second father, a huge mentor and father figure for him, who was Milan Mandaric, who owned the Oakland Stompers. And he called my father across, and my father ultimately decided to go and play for him. And then the rest is history. My father stayed in North America, and he hopped around a few North American soccer club teams around the continent, and ultimately ended in Cleveland when the old NASL folded in Edmonton. He and about a half dozen of his teammates, that some of those teammates that left Edmonton that came to Cleveland still reside here and call this home today. So, to come full circle back with those teammates still, who some of which still operate and own youth soccer clubs in the market. It's kind of a unique story that not many people might know, that have young kids in this youth soccer landscape of really what's the history of club soccer in Northeast Ohio.
Yep.
And who are the people that really were the founding fathers of this. And as we look at it as the second generation, we now have to take what they taught us and to elevate what's been given to us, right? They laid the groundwork down for 20 to 30 years. Now it's our turn to ultimately improve upon that. And we've gotten a head start because of them, although it hasn't been easy with our mergers and acquisitions and the blend. But, we've done big things in the market that have been supported and at times maybe not supported. But at the end of the day, we are highly ambitious. We're trying to do more for the community. Back when we were players in the youth game here, there was less clubs. They were more competitive. So you didn't have to travel around the country to get good, meaningful games. You had them at home, and you knew how to get up for games. You knew how to defend your home field. That has been lost in these generations because the soccer landscape's become diluted. Everybody opens up a club now, which is fine, but the player pools have been diluted. So what we've done is we've brought three prominent clubs back together so that our player pools are stronger, and we're able to go and play against better competition and achieve success and help push players along their reach their goals and ambitions.
Just a question that kind of came as we were talking here. What role then does the USL assets play in regards to the Cleveland Force brand and what you're talking about now?
Yeah, I think we're in a phenomenal position that we've put ourselves in with the USL, that we can provide kids in Northeast Ohio the opportunity for a pre-professional pathway. And the USL uses the term pre-professional. Everybody asks us, what's pre-professional? The USL has 2 levels on the men's side and 1 upcoming women's level for actual professional soccer. The USL League 2 and the USLW League is their pre-professional platform that allows those players that are a step or two away from being identified and given a platform to become professionals to achieve their dreams. That's what the USL2 and W League provides. There's equity now with the W League's growth from last year's in its inaugural season to now year 2 where we're joining in, is it gives a huge opportunity for female players that ultimately can't get into the pro game. Now it gives them a platform for the players, the staff, the front office, the operations staff. Everybody in the women's game now has a new opportunity, and we are thankful we get an opportunity to present that in Cleveland. The beauty behind the USL is they've had the vision to say there's another opportunity to continue to develop the next generation through their USL Academy under 19 boys program, which we are hoping that they can expand it into the women's game as well as into younger generations of players not beyond just U19 but also U16 and maybe below, so that we can continue to provide players of Northeast Ohio, not just Cleveland Force soccer players, but the players who really have ambitions to achieve the highest level of success in the sport. We now have given them a pathway that, yes, we own and operate, but this is club neutral in many ways, that we open the door to anybody that can come participate here and still participate in their home club.
Love that. And it sounds like Force has really been working to build a brand and got almost a unique pathway, if you will. Do you feel that there's a unique type of player or family that we're trying to attract to Cleveland Force?
Yeah, I think ultimately there's a lot of families that have high aspirations, but that isn't enough for us. I think for us, we are in a very unique position where we can be more selective to make sure that they meet our core values. You know, a lot of organizations talk about core values. Everett, you and I really were the driving force behind these core values. We looked at what those founding fathers brought to us. We looked at what mattered to them. We looked at what mattered to us as human beings and what kind of people we wanted to raise in our organization, what kind of young ladies you wanted to raise at home with your wife.
Yep.
So this meant a lot to us to develop these core values that allowed us to filter the conversation with parents through those core values. To say up front, you may be an extremely talented family. Kid may be very talented at this age, but you don't meet our core values. And if you don't meet the values, you won't have success here in this organization. So there's no reason to get you just because your kid is talented. There's more to it. We talk about, and this again comes from our forefathers, the initial club owners, is we have to have a bigger take on the person. We have to value the person and the family and the values from that family more than we maybe have to value the footballer at times. So I think looking at it through that lens, that is a big piece to this that has helped us identify the right people in our organization, especially as we go from the outside coming in. As we've gotten high demand of people wanting to come in, we realize that some people aren't the right fit for us and we're not the right fit for them.
No, I love that, and I would even go on and add a little bit more to that. You know, just from the footballing sense, a technical director, sporting side, the person that comes first and foremost. We try and profile that family, and then looking at the uniqueness of that to say that effort and hard work is what we're trying to reward in a process that really is a filtering system, if you look at it that way, because it's about developing talent that can go on and play at the college level. You know, that's what Cleveland Force is really designing their pathways to say, hey, we have a path for you to try to aspire to play at that college level. And by the way, if you aspire to something greater, we have that opportunity for you. But what has to lead that is obviously academics. They got to do well in school, but also their personality. You know, do you interact with others the right way? Do you respect the process of a coach giving you feedback and not taking it as criticism at the end of the day, right? Because to play at those levels, you got to be willing to be accepting, you know, and be willing to take something in and say, okay, I respect that, and let me go and work on that. And the other thing that's really been driving our profiles of our athletes that makes us unique is the ability to have a conversation, right? We want to be able to have a conversation, obviously, with the family and then with the athlete as they kind of progress through things. And I think that is what we're looking for as a profile. I like using that word, as you said. We worked really hard at developing a player profile, a family profile, so that it makes it more sustainable. You know, as we speak about our founding fathers, people that instilled these principles into us, we want to be able to replicate that into the next generation of coaches. I think so. Our uniqueness when we think about the player and the type of people we're trying to attract, it also flows into our coaching staff. That we're trying to identify coaches that also put the person first, right? And then we can support them in our education department with developing their soccer acumen or how they go about teaching the game or different methodologies, which are just methodologies or processes, right? Are you humble enough and respectful enough and have the integrity to follow the process, no different than you and I are doing, that has been laid out before us, right? So I think that also makes us unique on how we do our talent identification, how we do our coach identification. It ultimately allows us to really express ourselves in the different pathways that have been created here at Cleveland Force going forward. So as we continue to flow through that, I had another one that came to mind. We spoke about education earlier, and we spoke about we want to be an educational institution. Can you speak a little bit about open tryouts versus, or open enrollment, versus tryouts?
Sure. So throughout the course of the year, we have kind of waves of opportunities for new players to come into the organization. You know, what is key to us every single year at the middle to end of May as we wrap up one soccer season and get ready for the next soccer season is inviting back all of our current members to guarantee them a spot back in this organization. And again, that's important because we've vetted these families through our core value filter, that we know that even though a player may be developmentally behind, they have the right character to be successful in our organization at the various levels we provide. And the first opportunity is our annual tryouts, which typically occur between middle to late May and into through June. That is our first opportunity to piece in where we have roster openings around those returning Cleveland Force players that have been with us the prior year or several years. That's the first stage. The second stage is identifying where we have openings in our rosters at various levels within our organization between high performance and competitive. We then create open enrollment. The open enrollment period is exactly what it sounds like. We have openings in these rosters. We vet through pre-filtering with communications and emails and phone calls players that want to come in. We identify where they've been from. If we have an opportunity to see them on the field, we will. And if we don't, we'll place them in our starting classrooms, as we call them. And then if they show progress, we can move them through our system because we have a diverse organization that gives an opportunity to every type of player, from kids that are just starting that want to understand what club soccer is about, all the way to the kids that are in our pre-professional teams that are getting ready to potentially become MLS or USL or international players in the market.
No.
Edit that, please. Get MLS out of there.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and I'm taking a pause there, but I love that. That was, I think parents would really benefit from knowing that information, and understanding kind of that process. I'll add from the sporting and technical director's side as far as the player evaluations of our internal membership, because I get that question quite often, is that when you're a member in the club, every session, every game, every opportunity is a chance to express yourself and be evaluated, right? So you spoke to our core values. So those players to us aren't coming back to try out, as you said. We're offering you a spot back in the club based on your experience or your effort throughout the whole year, right? So we're looking to add value and depth to that to create a competitive environment. So we call that the player evaluation period, which runs August through June, that you're always having an opportunity to be evaluated and have that opportunity to compete and change. Because it's very important in the development process. Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Who you are at 9 is not who you'll be at 16, right? And what you do in between is really important for us. And we do believe that if you're here early, you're going to benefit from what we have to offer. So those open enrollments are to add value. The trials are to add value. And the player evaluations is to create sustainability and grow the character and the talent of our player pool. So we think through those different things, those different terms. We hope that families find that they have a guide to how to approach us, how to enter into the Force ecosystem and benefit from what we're offering overall.
What makes Cleveland Force Soccer Club unique is the fact that we offer the region's most competitive soccer platforms between ages 3 through pre-professional, which can go mainly under 23, but over age as well. We offer in our juniors, minis, and K1 programming very high-level professional training that's run by a standalone director and support staff, to our competitive programs that is operated through 3 full-time program directors, to our high-performance national and regional tier that's operated by 6 full-time directors. Our pre-professional gives us the unique opportunity to be a capstone program to those players that come through our programming that have aspirations to move forward in the game. A common question that we're getting right now as we lead into the open enrollment tryout period is, what is the right level for my kid, and what does that look like for us as a family? And I think what I have seen most commonly recently is us putting that back onto the families to say, what are you looking for? Where has your child played in the past? And what level of commitment are you looking to make in this process for your child? As we head into tryouts right now for the supplemental open enrollment tryout period, we are seeing a lot of questions that are coming through about what is the right fit for my child based on all these various programs you have. For our competitive program, we offer a lesser commitment and more of an a la carte approach, meaning we only facilitate one team training session a week and one league game on average on a week. So those families that they have children that want to do more can enroll into our supplemental training programs that can give them upwards of 3 training sessions per week if they so fit in their schedules. When you go into our high performance programs, that is between 2 to 3 training sessions a week, more consistent games, a little bit more travel for sub-regional, regional, and national, depending on the levels that your kids play in. And really what we do is we identify the talent of the player. We assess the player. We give the parents the feedback of where we feel the player is best suited to play. But we also have an open conversation with the families to say, you may not want that. What do you want as a family? How much commitment are you looking to make? How far are you looking to drive on a nightly basis for training and how frequently? And we listen to that family and we try to put them in the correct classroom or environment for their child's development. What we try to avoid is if we have a player that maybe the family is looking for a certain level of commitment, but they also have a child that maybe doesn't fit that level, that's where we have to have open and honest conversations with each and every family to let them know our professional assessment of what we would do if we were them and what's best for their child. Everett, what do you hear from parents that are inquiring about coming to try out for Cleveland Force?
Number one thing I hear from families these days is, what opportunities do their kids have to advance? They're asking questions about the player pathway in relation to what leagues do we participate in. We're very blessed that we are able to participate in the top competitive leagues in the country from a youth perspective with the ECNL, ECNLR, and then the GLA League. So being able to offer families that opportunity is great. Also, with the younger families right now, I'm hearing more about 11v11 soccer at an earlier age. I'm hearing families asking that question, hey, when do you start 11v11 soccer? Really excited to share with families. We really started at U12 in the spring season, looking to expand that as well. So families are always looking for that opportunity. And the other one is, do they have a team experience? So families are asking that because they know we're player-centered. They understand we have different training centers, as we call them. But now we're able to offer them, training centers on the east, the west, and the south. So they're able to have a full immersed team experience while still being part of a talent ID process that provides an opportunity for their kid to grow and make one of the ECNL rosters in the future when they get to U13 or older. So families have been really inquiring about the pathway, the opportunities that are presented from those pathways as we go forward, and really about the development things that we offer as far as either 11v11 versus 9v9 and our supplemental program. What are you doing to help my kid improve themselves? And we do have a supplemental program that's called Athletes of Excellence, or AOE. So they always like hearing about that and knowing that it's something they can participate in and get to know the club a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'll go back to something you said, Everett, with the geographic locations. I think admittedly that is something that isn't consistent across the board right now because we're growing in the southeast market where we are working diligently to develop teams in that area. So some of those families may not experience what West Side families experience with set teams where it's consistent with the same coach and the same player pool. I think that is something that we try to be candid with, to say you have to have a little patience with us as we grow through this transition period, that we project into the future to say in the next year to 2 to 3 years, we'll have built out, consistent, organically grown and developed geographic specific teams, especially 12 and below.
Yep. Nope. Totally agree with that 100%.
Everett, what would you say has changed the most in youth soccer, specifically in the Northeast Ohio market, since you've joined back in as a professional soccer coach in the mid-2000s?
The one thing I would say has probably changed the most is the interactions with the parents, meaning that the parent interaction, we was hoping that it would shift and they wouldn't be as vocal from the sidelines and overbearing with their kids. I'm actually seeing a trend where that it actually is more now, where families are even more competitive, more engaged, and actually more demanding that their kid has to be placed on a certain roster, almost a sense of entitlement has increased over the last decade or so as I look into it. There's something to be said about that because we want our kids to do well. We want our kids to be aspiring for that next level. But I do feel there's a lack of humility and respect to the process that it's longer than just a short-term thing. So
Can I ask you a question on
Yeah.
that? Do you think that also is a key piece to your educational component? The effort that you've put in, I think, is beyond anything I've ever seen for parent education to set realistic rules, regulations, expectations through the educational developmental pathway.
Absolutely. I think the education pathway has really influenced what we've tried to do as an organization. Is that I mentioned earlier, we have things called check-in meetings and IDPs at a very young age. Those aren't just for the children, those are for the parents as well, to educate them on what this process will look like. Because we got great feedback from our families. Like, we weren't doing a great job, self-admittedly, of setting the expectation and letting them know what the next step might look like for their kid. Now, me in particular, personally made it a part of our process that we're going to engage those families face to face as much as we can to say, this is the plan that the club has for your children or your child, male or female, wherever they are on the spectrum, and letting them know that this is an earned opportunity as you go forward. But talent has something to do with that. So yeah, I absolutely think that because what we're seeing in the marketplace here in Northeastern Ohio, and to be honest, around the country, we've made it a personal thing, if you will, and a professional thing to make sure we address that based on the education we receive from U.S. Soccer, through our own leadership development as well, because we do take time as an organization to get together as leaders and really kind of grow ourselves so that we can grow others as we go along. And we think that parent education part of it is very important to the overall development of the child. You know, if we don't get these sidelines to be better as far as our behaviors and actions towards our children, both pre-game, during game, and post-game, we're not only having an impact on the player, but on the coach, on the referees, on the ecosystem as a whole. And we won't have this beautiful game if we don't start to curve that. It's really important. It's probably the most important thing to me right now is that parent education piece.
What do you hear from parents on, if you could summarize, what are some of the most common pain points that they come back to you with beyond the obvious ones of playing time, role on the team, position on the team, your substitution patterns?
Yep.
What do you hear?
Keeping it short, player psychology. You know, my son or daughter is feeling X, right? And that's what I hear the most. Yeah, we hear those other things, like you said, playing time, position on the field, the why, but it all comes back to player psychology and building the grit theory, if you will, to help the player go through these troughs or the storming phase of their own individual development. So the most that I hear out of every parent as far as a main point, a pain point, is my son or daughter is feeling X, right? And it's typically from a negative lens, but then we try and frame that for the player and for the family to say, hey, let's have this IDP meeting so you can build a relationship with your coach so they better understand, like, we're here to support you. We're here to be a part of your process that you have to take ownership of. That is never going to be perfect, right? I do sympathize and empathize with the families, though, because they don't have that information, right? Your son or daughter will get into the car with you, and they're feeling something from that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just coached the game, and maybe you had to make a coaching choice based on the game resistance that was there. And parents then come back, and they're much better in our organization of asking as opposed to demanding and telling. You know, and I think that is so amazing. It's been such a change since the pandemic that families are a little bit more engaging in our club, to really take that time to work with us as we work with them to provide the best experience possible for their kids. Yep.
Everett, what do you see from families that maybe is a positive behavior that you as a technical director, sporting director, as well as a program director in a 9v9 environment, what do you see that you would say, I would love to see emulation of that type of behavior or approach?
Yeah, what I'd love to see more, Marco, is more families taking time to invest in a growth mindset. You know, there's a lot of material out there right now that they can have a conversation with their kid as far as, like, hey, what does it mean to be a growth mindset person versus a fixed mindset as they go forward? I'd love to see more families emulating positive communication with their coaching staff. You know, asking questions as opposed to demanding things and asking for things directly or indirectly. Those are just the firm things as far as having a conversation. You know, families are more inclined to have a conversation about their child's development and not make the assumption that what we are doing as a club is a detriment to their child, but an added value both from adversity and positive affirmation and reinforcement. You know, because those things have to kind of coincide with each other. The other thing is having conversations at home. You know, families that I've interacted with that are having a little bit more of a quote unquote mature conversation early, find that those players are excelling right away, as opposed to the families that are coming to us and telling us that they told their kid X, and now their kid is expected to meet this adult expectation when there's never been a conversation with the child. So to clarify that is more families that are asking their children what they want to do, as opposed to saying, this is what you need to do. You know, that's a really important thing when I'm listening to these things in our check-ins and IDPs. Am I profiling the family? Absolutely. Just trying to find out how they interact with their child to make sure it's in line with our values and what we have learned provides the best opportunity for long-term success.
We've addressed the change in parenting. What have you seen in the Northeast Ohio market that has changed since you were a kid playing to present day you're leading a successful organization in Cleveland?
Biggest change, and I think I'm going to take this in two different directions. One is just the overall ecosystem. There's today way more clubs than there ever has been. When we were younger, there were only 5 real major clubs. I can always remember as a kid playing here in Northeast Ohio, and you know, hindsight's always 20/20, is every game and every training session, and not to say D1 is immeasurable, we were 17 out of 18 kids that went D1, and then the team against us was another 15 or 14. So every single game you're playing against that level of athlete, that level of talent. Now you go to a game and sometimes the game resistance is fantastic, but you don't get it here in Northeast Ohio on a regular basis. You have to travel for it.
Correct.
Right? So the distance that you have to go to find a proper game is much greater than it ever has been. I'll definitely say this, though, at the younger ages, from when we were younger, the talent as far as their ability to think about the game and their application of skill is much higher, right? It's much higher. And I would say there's more quality coaches. I'm not going to say really superior and great coaches, but there's definitely more coaching in the marketplace, right? But because the market is so broad and saturated, it's very difficult to really develop the talent because the talent is too spread out, right? So from the ecosystem, I think the distance you have to go to get a proper game and get a good training session is definitely a big change. But from the player side of it, what has changed is the amount of resources that are available to them. They have a ton of resources, these kids, from the mental side, the nutrition side, the athletic development side, the skill development side. I just think that's amazing. You know, I think it's an opportunity for a young player these days to really excel in the sport when you can find a nice blend, and I think that's what we're working on here at Force, is a way to make sure that families are educated on how to approach them, provide them a process within Cleveland Force to develop their skill, their body, and their mind as they go forward, and trying to do it in an ecosystem that geographically makes sense for our families, right? So when you look at Cleveland Force, what makes us unique is our ability now to address all those environmental barriers and making them more of a positive from our coaching, our facility usage, our leadership, with all of us working from the same hymn sheet, that we're trying to make sure that these young men and ladies grow up with every opportunity that they can to meet their full potential, ultimately.
So you mentioned our ecosystem. What some people may not know, if you can elaborate on it, is our ecosystem that we're building and developing within our juniors academy in-house leagues, our in-house facility leagues, and potential future opportunities for in-house leagues for our own 12 and below programming. Can you explain a little bit of what we are planned to do, what we have planned for the future, what our vision is for our own ecosystem, and how we can better control to solve that issue with a diluted market? How can we better impact that with our control measures?
Yes, our control measures are, again, talking about the whole ecosystem, is by developing 3 different, as we use in our language, training centers. We're now able to develop players in multiple areas of Northeast Ohio based on positional need, player profiles, personalities. So what I mean by that is we no longer have one club, one team mentality where I can only develop one forward or one goalkeeper. We now can develop 3 different goalkeepers, 3 different forwards, or multiple players in different positions around Northeast Ohio, with our long-term vision of then pooling those kids together based on their talent, their ability, their character into a smaller pool. That's why it's a pyramid, it's smaller at the top. So it addressed the barrier of geographical location. We're providing an opportunity to address the barrier of enhanced skill development. We're providing those opportunities with our force facilities, with our indoor and outdoor options that we have for the kids here in Northeast Ohio. And we're also addressing the competitive part by playing our players in our juniors department against each other at a young age. So families don't have to travel all over Northeast Ohio to get a game or get an experience within the game that is valuable to their kid based on their age and their ability. So we've also created a system where we have the ability to move players up and down. So we have a young player that's excelling, an honor student, if you will, in one of our classrooms. They have the ability to move to a different classroom. That's not something that you can do in another club. That's a unique experience here at Cleveland Force, that you could be on Team A, but still have an experience on Team B, but still be a part of Team A, where your friends and your relationships are being built. And from a female perspective, one of the big things in development these days is young ladies need to play against boys. But also at the younger ages, it's important for the boys to play against the girls because they mature faster. So we've addressed that idea at a younger age that we can develop both male and female athletes at their peak performance by using their different attributes based on where they are in their maturation. And then lastly, we've created an opportunity with the oldest kids, 11v11, let's say 15 through 19, that they also still have a tiered system that they can aspire to more. They can be in an ECNL, but still say, you know what? If I work a little bit harder, if I show that I have this dream and ambition, I can go into the USL. And I can go beyond just my college years and continue in this game. So we look at the environment. We did. We know where we are today, but to address that geographical barrier, the competition barrier, I think where we are today and what we plan to do in the future, we've really created a model that's going to allow us to best service anyone that's a part of Cleveland Force now and well into the future.
Hello, and thank you for registering your child for an upcoming tryout with Cleveland Force Soccer Club. My name is Marco Raduca, and I'm the club's Director of Operations. We are excited to have you and your family out to a tryout in the upcoming days, and please know that you can contact me directly with any questions that you may have about our programming. You can find my email on the screen below. We will go through the process of communicating with you, and we'll let you know if there is follow-up conversations that need to be had with any of our individual program directors specific to your child's needs. We are excited that you are interested in our club and want to become a part of Cleveland's premier player pathway. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.